What if the battered board game at the bottom of your closet, the one with the taped corners and the rubber band around the box, is worth more than everything else stacked on top of it? 10 of these forgotten games have sold for hundreds, several for thousands, and one of them is the best-selling board game in the history of the world, while almost every copy is worth about the price of a coffee. Let's find out whether it is in your closet right now. Here is the truth almost nobody tells you. With board games, you are not really selling a game. You are selling a complete set of small pieces that were designed to be lost, and a cardboard box that was designed to be thrown away. That is the whole market in one sentence. The rules sheet, the little plastic figures, the dice, the cards nobody counted, those are what decide the number, and the game itself is simply the thing they came in. And nobody ever taught you to look for that. You were taught to check whether the game was fun, which is the one thing that has no bearing on this at all. Now, let me be honest with you, the way somebody who buys whole houses has to be. Your game is almost certainly not the handmade set that one unemployed engineer put together in 1933 with a board drawn on a round piece of oilcloth. That one sold at Sotheby's for $146,500 and went into a museum. There is no version of the copy in your closet that becomes that object. But the distance between a $2 game and a $500 game is much shorter than people think, and almost all of it is settled by counting tonight without leaving the house. Number 10. The Fantasy Dungeon game with the plastic furniture. A late 1980s adventure game with a wizard and a barbarian, dozens of small monster figures, and a set of miniature plastic tables, doors, and treasure chests to build rooms with. If yours is in the closet, the furniture is almost certainly not all there. Complete sets in good condition commonly sell between $300 and $1,000, and factory-sealed copies go well beyond that because collectors pay a premium for anything that was never opened. Here is your test tonight. Find the component list, which is usually printed inside the box lid or on the back of the rulebook, and count against it. The doors and the furniture are what go missing, and they are also what buyers check first. A set that is complete except for 2 doors is worth a fraction of one that is genuinely complete. And the loss I see most often. Somebody sells the game and keeps the little monster figures for a child to play with, which turns a $500 item into a $50 one and a handful of loose plastic. Number 9. The three-dimensional island with the rolling marbles. A game built on a molded plastic mountain where marbles run down channels as fireballs while you try to get across the island. It takes up an absurd amount of shelf space, which is exactly why so few survived intact. Complete copies in good condition regularly sit between $200 and $600, and the top of that range is for boxes that have not been crushed. Here is your test tonight. Count the marbles against the rules, then check the plastic mountain itself for cracks at the base where it was pressed back into the box year after year. Then look at the box corners, because with a game this large, the box is the most fragile part of the whole thing, and it is the first thing a buyer asks about. Number 8. The electronic tower with the beeping. An early 1980s game with a battery-powered plastic tower in the middle that made noises and ran the game for you. It was remarkable at the time, and it is remarkable now that any of them still work. A complete working set fetches over $200, and the working ones sell for considerably more than the ones that have gone silent, which is unusual for this category and worth knowing. Here is your test tonight. Put fresh batteries in the tower before you do anything else and see whether it lights and sounds. Then, check the paper components, because the cards in this one were thin and they curl. Working, complete, and with the cardboard flat is the combination that pays. Number 7. The board with the letters and the planchette. A wooden or pressed board printed with the alphabet, a sun and a moon, and a heart-shaped pointer on little legs. These have been made continuously for well over a century, so most people assume theirs is worthless. The early ones are a genuine collecting field, and the difference is in the material and the printing. The oldest boards are solid wood, with the letters printed directly onto the varnished surface, with a wooden planchette on felt-tipped legs. The later ones are pressed board with a plastic pointer, and those are the common ones. Here is your test tonight. Tap the board. Solid wood sounds dense, and pressed board sounds hollow. Then look at the pointer, because a wooden one with felt or glass feet puts you decades earlier than a clear plastic one, and the pointer is the part that is almost always missing. The loss I see most often with these is the board being kept and the pointer thrown out as a loose bit of plastic. Without it, the board is decoration, and the two together are the sale. Number 6. The cardboard war games with the tiny counters. Hex grid maps and hundreds of small die-cut cardboard squares representing regiments, produced from the late 1950s onward for a serious adult audience. These are worth attention precisely because of the counters. A game with all of its counters still on the unpunched sheet, exactly as it left the factory, is in a different category from the same game with the counters loose in a bag. Early printings of the first titles from this maker are the ones that carry real money. Here is your test tonight. Look for whether the counters are still attached in their sheet. Unpunched is the word collectors use, and it is the single most valuable condition in this whole category. Then, find the printing information on the box or the rules, because these games ran through many editions, and the first ones are what matter. Number 5. The career and life games from the middle of the century. Mid-century family games with lithographed boards, wooden pawns, and heavy card. The artwork on these is the reason people buy them now, and a good many are bought to be framed rather than played. That changes what matters. A game with a beautiful board and a wrecked box can still be worth real money to somebody who intends to cut it up, which is a slightly sad thing to say out loud, but it is how the market works. Here is your test tonight. Open the board out flat under a good light and check the hinge, because the fold is where these split. Then, look at the artwork rather than the completeness. If the board is bright, uncreased, and unfaded, you have something worth listing on its own, even if half the pieces are gone. Before we get to the top 5, there is something worth stopping on because it explains this entire list. The games that turn out to be worth real money are almost never the ones that were loved. They are the ones somebody bought, played twice, disliked, and shoved in a closet with everything still in the box. A game that a family played every Christmas for 15 years is a wonderful thing to own, and it is worth very little because the pieces went under the sofa one at a time. What actually decides the number is a short list of things. Whether the count is complete, whether the box has kept its shape, which printing you have, whether anything is still sealed. All of those are checkable in a few minutes, and that is why I put together a small guide called Reading the Marks, where I go through the printing codes and the completeness checks that separate a $5 game from a $500 one. So you can read a piece before somebody across the table reads it for you. It is linked below if you want it, and that is the last you will hear of it. Now, back to the list. Number 4, and this one is not a game at all, it is the count. Completeness governs this category more absolutely than any other thing I deal in. A missing rulebook can have a value. A missing pawn can end a sale. The good news is that almost every game tells you what should be inside it. There is a component list printed on the box, or inside the lid, or on the back page of the rules. Somebody wrote down exactly what you are supposed to have decades ago, and it is sitting there in the box waiting to be used. Here is your test tonight. Find the list, empty the box onto a table, and tick off every single item. Then do the thing almost nobody does, which is check under the cardboard insert, because small pieces slide beneath it and stay there for 40 years. I have found missing pawns under the tray in a game that was sold as incomplete more times than I can count. And the loss I see most often here is somebody listing a game as incomplete because they never found the list when the game was complete the whole time and the buyer got it for a fifth of its worth. Number 3. the fantasy role-playing set in the small box. 3 little paperback booklets in a plain box, published in 1974 by a tiny company that started an entire industry. If your brother had one, it is probably in a loft. The first printing came in a box with a wood-grain finish, and roughly 1,000 of those are believed to exist. One sold at auction in 2016 for $22,100. Later printings in the plain white box are far more common and worth much less, though still a serious sum for 3 thin booklets. Here is your test tonight. Look at the box first rather than the books. Wood grain patterning on the box is the one you want. Then check the booklets for the printing information and handle them as little as possible because the staples rust and the covers were never robust. Number 2. The box, the shrink wrap, and the smell. This is the one that quietly costs people the most, and it has nothing to do with what is inside. A game still in its factory shrink wrap can be worth many times the identical opened copy. Beyond that, box condition drives everything. Crushed corners, water staining, and a lid that no longer sits square will cut a price in half on their own. And there is one thing more that people never think about, which is smell. A game that has spent 30 years in a damp basement carries an odor that no buyer will accept and that cannot be removed. Here is your test tonight. Stand the box on a flat surface and look at it from the side to see whether the lid still sits level. Press the corners gently to see whether the card has gone soft. Then open it and smell it honestly, the way a stranger would. And do not, under any circumstances, open a sealed game to check whether it is complete. The seal is worth more than the certainty. Number 1. And it is almost certainly a game you already own because it is the best-selling board game in the world. The property trading game with the little metal tokens. Here's the part that surprises people. It has been printed continuously for 90 years in enormous quantities and in hundreds of versions, and the overwhelming majority of copies are worth a few dollars at most. Fame is not value. The most recognized game in the world is rarely the valuable object because the whole world already has one. But here is the turn this entire video has been walking toward, and it is the same lesson as every item tonight. The earliest commercial editions are a completely different object. The first sets from the 1930s came in a distinctive box, with the board packaged separately, and those early editions carry serious premiums. One person found a pristine early edition, bought it for $9, and resold it for $8,400. And the handmade sets that came before any of it, made by hand before a manufacturer would touch the idea, are the ones that reach 6 figures at Sotheby's. So here is your final test, and it is the smallest detail on this list. Open the box and look at the board itself. On the earliest commercial editions, the board is a separate item packed alongside the box, rather than a folding board built into the lid, and the printed rules will carry a date. Then look at the tokens. The earliest sets did not include metal tokens at all because players were expected to use buttons or charms from their own pockets. No metal tokens in the box. That is the difference between a game worth $4 and a game worth thousands, and it takes 10 seconds to check. Every single item tonight came down to the same habit. Not whether it is fun, not whether you remember playing it, not even whether it looks tidy on a shelf. The count, the box, and which printing you happen to have. So before you clear out a single closet or let anybody talk you into a lot price for the whole stack, do this first. Turn it over, read the mark, and believe what it tells you. If this made you want to go straight to the closet and start counting pieces, do me one small favor and like the video, because that is what tells me to keep making them. And the next one lives behind the subscribe button, which is this exact treatment for the costume jewelry sitting in the drawer upstairs. Then tell me down in the comments, what is the oldest game still in your house, and who did you play it with? A parent? A grandparent? A brother you have not beaten since? I read all of them, and the story of who sat at the table is half of what it is. One last thing, and I do mean it. Do not sell a single game before you have counted what is inside it. Number 1 is probably in your closet right now. Go and open it.